Whoa. Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pierce. This is Ukraine War Frontline update for the 31st of October 2023. That is indeed Halloween. I'm not making light of the war, this is a very serious subject. However, I do have to keep getting up and down. I'm up and down like a yo-yo answering that door out there. So if there are weird stops and starts to this video, that is why. It's because I'm being burgled by people threatening to trick me. Anyway, enough of the morality of trick-or-treating. Halloween. If you don't know what my map means, please pause the video and check out the key there. That gives you an idea. Before I go to the frontline update and to my map, I'm going to just point you towards an article I've written. You may or may not find it of interest. If you like American politics, it is concerning that. I'm quite happy with the title of the article. It's about Mike Pence dropping out of the presidential race and Mike Johnson being very important for Republicans as the newly elected or newly voted for, elected majority speaker of the GOP in the House of Representatives. Now, both are, less Mike Pence, but very much Mike Johnson is a Christian nationalist. Mike Pence is a conservative Christian, but I don't know. I think he's slightly better at separating church and state there, whereas Mike Johnson definitely isn't. So if you are interested in secularism and a pluralist society and secular values that the founders tried to enshrine in the Constitution, maybe this is an article for you. So go and check it out. It's predominantly about Mike Johnson and his positions on a whole bunch of different policies and agendas and whatnot. So that is an article for you. Not too much on Ukraine, although he's holding out on Ukraine, and I'm not a big fan of him for doing so. Right, let's go to the front line to check out the map. As we start in the northeast sector, Kupiansk to Svatovo to Kreminna, we can see the Andrew Perpetua, represented by the blue line, the Russian defensive line there, has some slight gains for the Ukrainians in the Yahidny area. Other than that, there's not really a lot to report along this front line. There are still obviously repelled attacks in a number of these different places, activity all along there, but we're going to come down to Bakhmut fairly quickly, and we'll stop in the north of Bakhmut where there's, I guess, a bit of a rare Ukrainian gain. There hasn't been too much movement around here, a bit in Bakivka for the Russians of late, but some gains for the Ukrainians around Dubovo-Vasilivka, as according to Syriac maps. Indeed, Syriac maps has that small gain there. The Ukrainian army made small advances southwest of Dubovo-Vasilivka, as according to them. Talking about the general position in Bakhmut, and indeed I think Avdiivka as well, but Bakhmut too. The Russian troops intensified actions in the Bakhmut area, according to the Ukrainians. This was stated by Commander of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, Colonel General Alexander Syrsky. According to him, the Russian military attacked Ukrainian positions on a daily basis, while, quote, the enemy's actions are supported by artillery and mortar fire. The use of kamikaze drones is constantly increasing. Although this goes against what some of the claims we've heard, particularly in Avdiivka, I know this is Bakhmut, where the Russians are complaining about a lack of artillery support and mortar fire, whereas possibly in Bakhmut they have more. In fact, previously I've said that there's quite a bit of artillery around the Bakhmut region. According to Syrsky, Russian occupiers are most active near Kupiansk, so that's right far up to the north, where they are trying to advance in several directions, while near Bakhmut the enemy has significantly strengthened its grouping and moved from defense to active operations, but is suffering heavy losses and cannot achieve its goals. So that's interesting that it appears that Bakhmut is kind of heating up as far as the Russians are concerned, trying to move on to an offensive there, but they're losing a lot of troops in so doing and are not achieving their goals. In fact, it is the Ukrainians around Bakhmut that appear to be having more success, particularly to the south. As you can see here by looking at Syriac maps, again, the Russians have been pushed back just north of the railway line by Klishchivka. So that is good for the Ukrainians, and indeed around the Andriivka area as well, as we can see from this Syriac Maps tweet saying that the Ukrainian army continue advancing slowly north of Klishchivka and south of Andriivka, in which battles are centered along the railway, where any attempt to advance from both sides is probing proving, I guess that means, to be difficult and costly. Yes, it will be costly for both sides. I get this sense, though, that the Russians are having a harder time around Bakhmut. The Ukrainians are slowly but surely advancing down this railway line and east of it towards the road. It just shows that I haven't got everything selected. So let's say, there we go, there's the road. And that's where the Russian defensive line is probably at the moment. Right, we're going to move down from Bakhmut now towards Avdiivka. As you can see, there are some gains for the Russians in this area. We've heard an awful lot of information coming out of Avdiivka, sources from the Russians telling us what it's been like, Ukrainians as well. I've got a Ukrainian one for you today. We know it's been bad for the Russians, particularly for those of the lower value troops such as the Storm Z penal units who have been kind of used as meat assault groups. But if we look to the north by Terikon, the slag heap there, the Russians, as according to Syriac maps, and they're aligning with deep state map here, we can see some small gains for the Russians around that slag heap, but luckily for the Ukrainians, not yet past the railway line and into the coke plants, and that is going to be significant if that happens. Now, reports says head of the Avdiivka military administration, Vitaly Barabash, reports that the Terikon, the waste heap as some call it, is under fire control of the Ukrainian army. All who climb it die, he noted. So this is the idea that the Ukrainians, and you can imagine this, you know what the slag heap is like, and it's a big tall kind of mound that is really pretty open. If you have anything up there, I imagine it's fairly easy pickings when you've got drones involved and fairly active artillery and mortar units too. Although, you know, there are still the claims that the Ukrainians don't have as much ammunition as they would like, for sure. It certainly wouldn't be somewhere I would like to go and try and sit with a mortar, because I think it's very vulnerable. Syriac Maps says of this particular area, Russian army expanded the control around the Terikon Hill by taking control over adjacent quarries and part of the tree line northeast of the coke plant. It's very possible we will see an assault of this industrial area in the next few days, not only because it's located in a high area, but also because it paves a way to advance in the urban area from this axis, avoiding the open field east of the railway. I need to go and answer the door. I was robbed. Anyway, moving on to the south, and we'll go back to Syriac Maps, who has further claims about the south of Avdiivka. Actually, no, I'm imagining things. They don't. But there are some very slight changes. That's what I was thinking. So literally just like a bit of a line. It's probably just a rejig for Syriac Maps there. There are some mappers. So here we have a Global War Monitor claiming that Russia has advanced in the Vodyane area, shown by being hit on a Vodyane sandpit. Well, this is basically the quarry that we learnt about over the last few days, so I don't think Global War Monitor is telling us anything particularly new there, and that is Avdiivka from my sources. As you can see, not an awful lot, and ISW doesn't say, I don't think, anything particularly new or pertinent. The loss of the Su-25, another one in the area, is something they mentioned there. Right, going back to the map, so I can imagine it's still going to be very tough in this area. The question is, can the Russians mount attacks to the same intensity and with the same number of troops and equipment that they have done previously? The weather's going to be getting significantly worse, I would think, although it's all right at the moment. But, you know, going forward, what is their timing looking like? What are their resources looking like? Have they exhausted themselves too much? It's all going to be literally about this stretch of land, as far as I'm concerned here, and whether they can get across there and into the coke plant. And if they can, I think that's possibly fairly significant. I think the Ukrainians will be wanting to defend by attacking. They need to take some of this territory back, although, as I say, they do have fire control over the Terracon, which is unsurprising. Right, as we come further to the south, claims from the Russians that they've marginally advanced in the Novomerkalivka area, but no changes to the maps. Velika Novosilka, again, very quiet. Some claims that there's fighting over the gully to the north of Priyutne, which is going to be this area there. We have seen the Russians have some increases in that area over the last week or so. And then we're going to come to the west to Robotyne, where Deep State map has some gains for the Ukrainians to the west of Robotyne. So there's slight gains around the front line there for them. The ISW says of the area, as you can see, not really too much to report to you. I've highlighted hardly anything. Geolocated footage published on the 29th indicates the Ukrainian forces advanced west of Robotyne, and here is the geolocation that is being mentioned. So Russian grad shelling, or more like missing, of Ukrainian forces near Robotyne. Is this an advance? So we'll plug in where the Ukrainians are, and this might give us an indication of what is going on. And yeah, that would indicate an advance. That is, although that's in the grey zone as far as Syriac maps and Deep State maps is concerned, for Andrew Perpetua, that is right on the Russian defensive line. And if the Ukrainians are there, that means that the Russians have been pushed out of that tree line. And Deep State map and Syriac maps, precisely what I assume this is why Deep State map have changed the mapping in the area, are probably on the money in that particular part of Robotyne sector. So yeah, the Ukrainians are advancing, it appears there, but it is slow, it is grinding, it is difficult. And that brings us to the end of the Zaporizhia front line. Not an awful lot more to talk about there. There is a little bit to talk about with regard to the Ukrainians in the Dnipro River area, where, as you can see here, some significant gains, as according to Andrew Perpetua's mapping, for the Ukrainians in pushing the Russians back in Krinky. Quite a long gain, I guess, for them there. Let's measure that. So from here to about there is 2.2 kilometers worth of width of gain, and then just going really a road or so back in some places. The mapping from Andrew Perpetua looks very different to this. This is still some of the old Google mapping here, 2018. So I can hear children, so I'm just going to pause. My goodness, it's my own 13-year-old twins with their rowdy friends. Ugh. They aren't children lovely. Right, where was I? So, Kherson. Let's have a look at some of the sources. We'll go to Noel Reports, quoting from Wargonzo. Russian channel Wargonzo, in his early report, claims that Ukrainian forces are trying to break through to Poima and Pishchanivka, and the door has gone again. More teenagers. Luckily, I used to manage before I got MS. One of the boys' football teams that was just out there. Lucky I knew him because, I wouldn't want to get on the wrong side of trick-or-treating him. Anyway, so Wargonzo is saying forces are trying to break through Poima and Pishchanivka, while Russian troops are trying to oust Ukrainians from Krinky. The fact that Ukrainians maintain a foothold in Krinky seems to be confirmed there. Max23 here says Ukrainian fighters are achieving good results on the left bank of the Kherson region, but we can't talk about it, about the details yet, and that's from Operational Command South. I'm sure there was something from Dmitry from War Translated concerning the Avdiivka area, which I'm going to dig out. But anyway, suffice to say that there is still quite a bit of activity going on along the Dnipro River. The ISW has a few things to say about this area too. Ukrainian forces continue to hold positions in the east bank of Kherson Oblast. Russian sources claim that Ukrainian forces control central Krinky. And one prominent Russian mill blogger claimed that Ukrainian forces marginally expanded their zone of control west of Krinky. Okay, so if we go back and look at Krinky's central, I mean, it's one of these long, thin settlements. So central Krinky is, I guess, going to be here, as opposed to, coming into this large area that goes more to the southeast. I don't know. It is a larger settlement than some of the settlements that the Ukraine has been fighting over. As you can see, buildings and quite a lot of, by the looks of it, warehouses and whatnot stretching along this whole area there. But anyway, to go back to the ISW, geolocated footage published on the 30th confirms that Russian forces hold positions in the forest areas east of Krinky. Multiple Russian sources, including a Wagner Group affiliated channel, complained about Russian forces' lack of counter-battery, electronic warfare and command and control capabilities in the Kherson direction, particularly near Krinky. So something we've heard a lot about. It seems to have long been the case that the Russians have struggled in terms of counter-battery and electronic warfare here. Now, last thing before I leave you, this was the Dmitry from War Translated piece that I wanted to share with you. This is actually a Ukrainian source here. So we've heard a lot from Russians in Avdiivka recently, just to remind you. Of course, you know where Avdiivka is, but on the map, this is on the Eastern Front it's being surrounded as well, But anyway, this is, as Dmitry says, a reality check about Avdiivka. So Ukrainian, what will I say about Avdiivka? To say that something could have been done better to repel the Russians is BS, because no one has ever done it better than those who are standing there now. I often hear people say that Avdiivka cannot be taken because of 8-year fortifications. All that is nonsense. Ask the soldiers where they hold the defense. Now the titanic work of the units stationed there continues. I'm personally proud of these fighters, but numbers are numbers, and even if 20 of the 100 reach the trenches, our soldiers can hardly give them an equal fight because they simply got tired destroying those 80. This is, I guess, referring to claims that when, I know Andrew Perpetuan's live stream talked about this particular area, when the Russians were attacking here with maybe 100 people, 3 armored vehicles charging these trenches on this railway line here, that they could maybe take out 2 of the 3 vehicles and maybe 2/3, maybe 90% of the people, but all it takes is 5 out of 100 people to reach these trench lines, and apparently they're armed with shovels as much as guns. So as soon as they hit those trench lines, they're digging, or the tree lines, they are digging themselves in. All it takes is a small amount of people to do it on one wave, and then the next wave another small amount, and then on the next wave another small amount, and before long you've got, it's very inefficient and slightly devalues human life, of course, but from the point of view of Russian command, they are getting purchased at the tree lines, and after 3 or 4 waves there's enough people to actually make a meaningful difference, and as they're taking out all these people, the Ukrainians are themselves getting exhausted and struggling to then be able to fight the people who are then entrenched, which is what I think is being talked about here. So Russians sent 2 more new brigades in this direction. Unfortunately, their strategic offensive potential is limitless. Only the professional work of artillery and heavy equipment units helps to effectively reduce it, but it is worth remembering the infantry always has the last word. So the importance of the artillery in doing their work in degrading the Russian assaults, but that will depend largely on ammunition, of course. But at the end of the day, it's the infantry who are the last people to say no to the Russian invaders. Anyway, I just thought that was a useful insight into the Ukrainian mentality, at least of one person in the area. Hopefully that's of use for you. A slightly quicker one today. I'm sure you'll be happy. Please like, subscribe and share. Appreciate all of your support. I would have put out much more content today, but there was a bit of a house disaster that took up most of my afternoon, so unfortunately I was unable to, but hopefully going forward tomorrow and for the rest of this week I should be able to be putting out my usual amount of content. Take care, speak soon.